There are 7 more characters in the Jujutsu Kaisen world that perfectly represent the 7 deadly sins. But before we start with the first sin, I want to thank you guys for the support and amazing comments. I will continue to work hard to deliver the best YouTube videos using anime and manga creatively in my fun YouTube videos for everyone. You guys also gave me a great insight on the other characters that didn't make it to the verse video. Some of those characters will be in this amazing video. So this video is not only made by me, but it's also made by you guys. I recommend you to stay until the end of the video because there are the most interesting characters. But first we're gonna start with the first sin, which is the sin of pride. Be aware, there are spoilers for the Jujutsu Kaisen story in this video. Pride is defined as an excessive love of one's own excellence. A person thinks more of oneself than one has to. The character that perfectly represents this sin is none other than Hajime Kashimo. Hajime is the perfect example of a Jujutsu sorcerer who lives for fighting the strongest opponents. If I didn't know better, I would say he's from the Baki universe. Towards the end of his life, after spending majority of it fighting Jujutsu sorcerers, Hajime was ultimately bored and unsatisfied with his battles he fought. His opponents didn't match his strength, and they couldn't satisfy his need. Because of this, it's natural to say that Kashimo's pride grew, and he wanted to challenge the strongest person Kenjaku knew, which was Sukuna. Kashimo needed to reincarnate in the future in order to fight Sukuna in the Killing Games. Before his fight with Sukuna, Kashimo slaughtered 40 Jujutsu sorcerers with ease. Only one fight was interesting to Kashimo, and that was the fight against Hakari. At the end, he even agreed to not kill Hakari in order to get to Sukuna easier. In his fight with Sukuna, Sukuna absolutely shattered Kashimo and wiped him from existence. But at least Kashimo got what he wanted. The same cannot be said about the character that perfectly represents the sin, greed. Greed is described as a selfish desire to have more of something, especially money or power. A character that perfectly represents this sin is none other than Kenjaku. Kenjaku is an ancient curse user who has existed for over 1,000 years using his innate curse technique, which allows him to transplant his brain into other people to control them. We haven't even talked about his evil deeds and selfish personality, but only from his curse technique, you know he is a greedy person. The major bodies he has taken are from Narito Shikamo, Yuji Itadori's mother, and his body of today, Suguru Geto. At times he can appear cheerful, playful, and even charming, but do not get deceived because he is manipulative and a deeply egotistical individual who will stop at nothing to further his ambition regardless of who he harmed, as was seen when he killed and absorbed Mahito, his so-called subordinate. Kenjaku's goal is essentially that he wants to know the true potential of cursed energy in the form of a being and believes that he can discover it by creating uncontrollable chaos. Easier said, he wants to merge Tengen with humanity. He has no interest in anything unrelated to his ultimate goal and only looks to build towards his endgame. He's willing to manipulate, sacrifice, and deceive in order to achieve this vision. Someone who has also a weird and chaotic vision is a character that perfectly represents the sin, lust. Lust is described as a disordered desire for or inordinate enjoyment of sexual pleasure. A character that perfectly represents this sin is none other than Yorozu. Yorozu was a Jujutsu sorcerer during the Heian era and quite literally obsessed with Sukuna. Yorozu was confident, wild, and a brash-natured woman who acted only to satisfy herself. She had an inelegant and obnoxious manner, and she preferred to not wear any clothes. Yorozu's obsession with Sukuna began at first sight, and her immediate desire was to elevate his loneliness with her love. The first time she saw Sukuna, she hugged him almost naked. She wanted to be the one who killed Sukuna, to take his solitude for herself. Upon reuniting with Sukuna in her new body in the Killing Games, Yorozu talked to him about love and proposed they get married if she defeats him. Sukuna agreed, and that drove Yorozu wild and crazy with enthusiasm. She became overwhelmed with joy and expressed several fantasies involving marrying the king of curses. She wanted to destroy the 3 villages, make shrunken heads of each villager's most handsome men, and enjoy monkey brain soup in celebration. Every sane person would despise these fantasies, but the character that perfectly represents gluttony would find it very interesting. Gluttony is defined as an overconsumption of anything to the point of waste. Someone who doesn't consume to live, but lives to consume. A character that perfectly represents this sin is none other than Mahito. Nanami described Mahito as extremely immature and has a superficiality about him, similar to Gojo, and beyond that, deep, dark strength. He is a sadistic and immature curse spirit who enjoys to toy with humans and their emotions without showing any remorse. He believes himself to be the very manifestation of human hatred of each other. Mahito has no sympathy for human lives and his comrades, as was seen in chapter 62 when Kenjaku, Mahito, and Choso were playing a game. At the same time, Choso's brother died fighting Itadori and Nobara Kugisaki. Kenjaku showed a little bit of interest, but Mahito completely ignored it, as if he never heard of it. The same thing can be seen when Mahito experiments experiments on humans, when he killed Junpei's mother and when he eventually killed Junpei himself. Time and time again, Mahito shows that his interest is his top priority and that nothing will stand in his way. And if it will, he will make sure that it's wiped from existence in the worst way possible. A character that will never stand in his way though perfectly represents the sin sloth. Sloth is described as a lack of physical or spiritual effort. A character that perfectly represents this sin is none other than Haruta Shigemo. Shigemo prioritizes self-preservation and his own pleasure above all else. If these two criteria are not met, then nothing will happen. And that's the problem with this character. Shigemo is a skilled fighter and fairly intelligent, as was seen when he fought Nobody Kukisaki, but he doesn't even come close to his potential. To begin with, he openly admitted that he prefers to fight weaker opponents rather than competing with stronger ones. And when trouble occurs, he'll try to run and hide. Besides that, Shigemo doesn't even understand his own curse technique and hasn't shown any interest in finding out. We can only be happy that he truly never tapped to his full potential, because he could have become a real danger, just like the character that perfectly represents the sin envy. But before we can move on to the next sin, there's an anomaly in this video, because in the Jujutsu Kaisen world there is another character that perfectly represents the sin sloth, and that character is none other than Yuki Tsukumo. She is one of the only 4 special grade Jujutsu sorcerers. Yuki is not aligned with Jujutsu High, so her reputation paints her as the only special grade sorcerer who doesn't take on missions. It has been said that Yuki simply does not agree with the higher up methods and works towards a curse-free world in her own way. But then you ask yourself, what did she really do in this time period? Which results did she gather that could actually help the Jujutsu world? I'm not ignorant to the fact that Yuki is an intelligent woman who has done her research, but how effective was her work for the Jujutsu world really? Sure, you can only do so much on your own, but with all the mystery that was painted around her, you would expect more. But Yuki is not only slothful during a period off screen, but also on screen. You could even say that Geigi Akutami was slothful with one of the characters of his story, because Yuki was always described as this mysterious woman with a special power, but we never got to see her real potential, because when we got to know her abilities for a little while, she died very quickly in the fight. We never got to see her real potential, her real danger. We just got to see her die at a young age. A character that also died at a young age perfectly represents the sin envy. Envy is described as a feeling of wanting something someone else has. But actually I was lying when I said this character perfectly represents the sin envy, because the character of this sin doesn't perfectly represent this sin. This character could also be considered an anomaly, because he represents 2 sins in one, and his name is Suguru Geto. Suguru Geto went from a good student to a student who was done with being good for the sake of being good. He was in need of a way to express his negative emotions inside of him, and he found that way, but it was also the way of his own destruction. In his early years, Suguru Geto was considered one of the strongest in the Jujutsu world. He shared this position with his best friend Gojo. Together they were unstoppable, and because of that they had no worries. At this point, Geto had to suffer in order to save the common people. He had to eat compressed cursed spirits, and each of them tasted like a rag drenched in vomit. But with his best friend at his side, it was bearable for him. But after the infamous incident, his best friend wasn't beside him anymore and became more distant, as they didn't go on missions together anymore. Gojo didn't seem to be suffering from being a sorcerer, but he still was. When you look at Geto, when Gojo became stronger than him, you ask yourself whether Geto became envious of Gojo, just in the way he spoke to Gojo, in the way he looked at Gojo. But the thing that is out of question is his wrath towards the non-sorcerers. Why in the world do I need to suffer for these people who don't even know what I'm doing? How long do I need to suffer for? It's because of them I need to suffer. Those and dozens of other thoughts lingered inside of Suguru Geto's mind, and that is logical when you think about it. People he saves are also the people that make him suffer, and if nothing is done, he will suffer till his death. Geto's wrath got him far, but it also destroyed it. But at least Suguru Geto was released from his cursed life. Someone who cannot say the same thing really embodies wrath. Wrath is defined as a strong feeling of hatred or resentment with a desire of vengeance. The character that perfectly represents this sin is none other than Maki Zenin. Maki is now considered one of the strongest in the Jujutsu world, but just like Toji, her praise and recognition for her power didn't start at her childhood. In her early days, Maki and her beloved sister Mai faced the harsh judgment of her family and the Zenin clan, much like Toji did. She wasn't expectedly the golden child. Instead, she was viewed as a pest and a source of shame. And why, you ask? It's because Maki possessed little cursed energy, and in the Zenin clan that is seen as a curse. Unlike Toji, her treatment wasn't as severe, but it was enough to fuel Maki's determination to break free from those chains and return as a strong Jujutsu sorcerer who is worthy of becoming the next clan head. Her anger and hatred for the way her family and clan was made her stronger every single day. But her real anger was when the only family member she loved was killed right next to her by her own family. This is when Maki snapped. And so, Maki embraces the darkness within, evolving into a monstrous force that had always lurked beneath the surface. As a promise to her sister, Maki killed her father, her mother, and her entire clan, with the exception of Megumi Fushiguro.